world calls for wet work.
Bitch!
And we answer. No greater good. No just cause.
What a load of bullshit.
Bitch! 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 Treat us like a damn fiddle! Bitch! 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 Treat us like a damn fiddle! Bitch! 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 Treat us like a damn fiddle! Bitch! 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 Come on, start talking, bitch! You treat us like a damn fiddle! Bitch! 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 Treat us like a damn...
Okay, so I'm back from Op34 Part 2. This is the second time I've played this AO, and it's fucking great. It's an abandoned chemical plant in Chicagoland. Check it out if you get the chance. Both AMS and Third Coast Airsoft run Milsims here. As stated in my previous AAR from the first time I played, though, make sure you take the proper safety precautions. Wear a helmet, bring a light, and watch your step. Many of the buildings are pitch dark inside, and there are sudden drops, low-hanging pipes, angle iron, open panel doors, etc. everywhere. Last year, I was a rifleman for UFS. This year, I was Alpha Platoon leader at the request of the UFS commanding officer AMS Rick. My wife, the Red Queen, was also in a leadership position, serving as Rick's executive officer. Instead of fighting Cost this year, we fought Sierra Dynamics, the AMS storyline's PMC mercenary faction. The UFS mission was to find and recover evidence and proof that the plant had been used to create dangerous illegal chemical agents. The Sierra Dynamics mission was to sanitize the area and destroy incriminating evidence that could implicate their employers. Now, before I get into the AAR, I'm going to address the elephant in the room. AMS puts on great events. They are receptive to criticism, and they genuinely care about the quality of their events. There are some things, however, that are completely out of their control. In this case, it was the weather. This was the absolute shittiest weather that we could have possibly had. I'm not merely stating an opinion, and it is not hyperbole. Like, literally, if the weather had gotten any worse, it would not have been safe to play, and they would have had to call the event off. Seriously, it was 40 degrees, very windy, and pouring rain. Steady. All fucking day. It never let up, not even once, not even a little. Severe thunderstorms hit in the afternoon, too. The AMS staff got together every hour and reassessed whether or not they could keep playing or whether they needed to call Index. That is how seriously fucked the weather was. They even called in the building site manager to discuss which buildings had lightning rods and which ones didn't, because the storm just wasn't letting up, and they were forced to develop an emergency contingency plan in case they had to move everyone to shelter on short notice. Eventually, they had to give in and call Index 2 hours early on Saturday because several players had already drowned trying to cross the street between 56 and 66, and one of the Australian guys had been killed by its stingray. It would have been dangerous to keep playing. They made the right call, in my opinion. Despite their efforts, we still lost a number of players as cold weather injuries. Many players, especially ones who came from the southern states, simply were not prepared for spring in Chicago. 40 degrees may not sound that cold, but if you get wet, you can actually be in pretty serious trouble at that temperature, especially with wind chill. Most of us Midwestern players were layered up. I myself wore Gore-Tex rain gear and rubber overboots, but I saw an awful lot of really rough-looking UFS guys shivering and turning blue. Many of them had no wet weather gear and no cold weather gear, just their tan BDUs over tan t-shirts, as if they were going to go play on a sunny spring afternoon in Texas or California. Nothing to keep them warm, let alone keep them dry. That's a huge problem. Once you get wet, you can't warm up. You just can't. That's why the Army issues Gore-Tex, and that's why it's always an inspectable item on every packing list at every school they ever send you to. Now, Milsim event organizers can't be held responsible for the weather, nor can they realistically expect everyone to have military-issue rain gear, so none of this is on AMS. I'm going to tell you right now, though, that if you don't have rain gear, you need to invest in some. It is a vital part of your Milsim kit. It doesn't have to be high-speed, Gore-Tex, brand-name stuff either. Just simple Frog Togs rain suit in tan, green, or black, depending on what your faction is, would be perfectly fine, and can be found pretty much anywhere that sells camping stuff. Heck, Walmart carries them. While you're at it, get a pair of rubber overboots. They're cheap, and oh my god, you'll fucking thank me someday when you march through 8 inches of water for 10 hours straight and come out with dry socks. Yeah, that's right. Make fun of my stupid green rubber boots. My feet were nice and dry at the end of the day. My fucking socks weren't even damp. All kidding aside, get you some rain gear. It is easy to find, and there are some very affordable options out there. I picked up my Gore-Tex desert pants at Army Navy Surplus in Milwaukee for $25. They didn't have a matching top in my size, so I just wore my surplus Belgian Gore-Tex top underneath a regular desert DCU blouse. It was super effective. The green overboots didn't actually cost me anything because I literally pulled them out of a dumpster at an army base years ago. That's right, that's your tax dollars at work, my friend. I found an entire fucking dumpster full of pro masks and green overboots behind an engineering battalion headquarters. The boots were brand new and literally still had tags on them.
Command, this is Lima Zulu. Just be advised, Alpha 4 has moved into 56. Carl's trying to reconsolidate his squad. He's got about 6 people. So if you have casualties respawning, send them to 56 if they're from Alpha 4.
On to the event itself. I was the platoon leader for Alpha Platoon, which was made up of 4 squads. The planning meetings started a month before the event, when the op board was first published, and were done by Skype and conference calls. After meeting my squad leaders and realizing that I had the good fortune to have squads that were mostly established teams, I knew I was going to have a pretty easy job. These guys all seemed quite competent and quite capable. Now, as platoon leader, I'm basically filling the role of a Butterbar lieutenant. If there's one thing I know about Butterbar LTs in the real army, it's that they tend to be universally despised for micromanaging their squad leaders and thus fucking everything up. I decided to not be that guy. I put my faith in my NCOs and let them do their jobs. I decided that if a squad leader had an idea and came up with a plan, I was going to let them do it, as long as they asked nicely and it didn't contradict our mission. It worked brilliantly. Alpha Platoon perfectly executed our initial movement to contact, respected the limit of advance, and basically made my life easy. All I did was keep track of where they were and what they were doing. I called them regularly from my RP in Building 56 and made sure that they were well informed of current missions, progress, and any fragos. I constantly gave sit-reps to the TOC so that command knew where each of my squads was and what they were doing at any given time. I also answered a lot of questions, sometimes talking to one person face-to-face while 2 or more people on different radio freaks squawked in each of my earpieces at the same time. I did my best to rotate out my squads so that any one squad didn't get stuck just sitting in one part of the field for the whole day. Sadly, I don't have much footage because the weather killed my camera pretty early in the day on Saturday. It won't even turn on anymore. As a platoon leader, I had a larger perspective of the game. I was responsible for 50 people and monitored radio frequencies that the average grunt isn't allowed access to. Every 15 to 20 minutes I got sit reps from each of my squad leaders and relayed their location, strength, and current activity to the command net. Meanwhile, at the TOC, RQ and Rick made notes on the dry erase map and grease boards accordingly. Alpha Platoon's job was to establish the diagonal limit of advance at game on. We did so. For the most part, it went pretty smoothly. We had one problem moving into Building 57, however, which required us to call an admin. Alpha 1 was attempting to breach 57 from 2 different doors at once, when they discovered the hard way that Sierra Dynamics had taken a rope and tied a door shut on the west side of the building. That is specifically banned in the AMS rule set and the facility-specific safety rules. The same breaching effort also ran into another issue at the north door. The door opens up into a small room which connects to the larger room that the west door leads to. Two of the guys inside the smaller room refused to take a grenade hit because they believed that they were outside of the 15-foot blast. They didn't shoot my guys when they entered, though. They just sat there and stared at them. Alpha 1 did not shoot these guys because they assumed that they were killed by the grenade. Then, when Alpha 1 tossed a second grenade and entered the larger main room, those Sierra Dynamics guys in the smaller room stood up and shot them in the back. Now, I'm not bringing this all up to call out cheating or poor sportsmanship. I'm bringing this up because of the relevance of what happened next. Alpha 1 squad leader called me, and I called an admin. Fortunately, there was one close by. He was there in minutes. Here's the problem, though. The admin didn't know the grenade rules. He told the guys incorrectly that a grenade kills everyone in a room, no matter how large the room is. The Sierra Dynamics guys called bullshit on this and stormed off. They were angry. My guys were confused as well because now they were questioning whether or not they knew the grenade rules themselves. This brings me back to something that happened at the first Copperhead a couple years ago, where Cost breached a door that was painted red and had "Do Not Breach" spray painted on it in yellow. They were stacked up out back and had specifically asked an admin if it was okay to breach the door or if they had to go to the next one. The admin told them that it was okay as long as there was no caution tape. My wife and I were UFS defenders inside the building. A Cost player busted the glass out of a window so they could toss a grenade. We got killed by the grenade, and then the Cost breacher burst through the off-limits door like the fucking Kool-Aid man, tripped over my dead body, and flopped on his face in the process. There was some cussing, mostly on the part of my wife, and some pained, pitiful noises from me and the big dude on top of me. Our Q and I composed ourselves, apologized for swearing at the Cost players, and then got up to walk to respawn after being searched, since we were under the impression that there was no bleed-out for explosions or knife kills. UFS was charged with a war crime that incident because we got right up to walk to respawn a minute after being killed and searched, and didn't wait 5 minutes. Now, the safety brief for that event had specifically said that knife kills and explosions instantly kill you, and you don't bleed out. So, UFS got charged with a war crime for dying, and possibly for using harsh language, while Cost broke a window and went through an off-limits door, but the admin let it fly. The admin didn't know the rules. It wasn't that anyone was trying to cheat. The Cost players did ask permission from staff. The problem was that when they asked the admin for clarification, he gave them incorrect information. At the time, I didn't really know what had happened, but since then I have talked to Cost players and a photographer who were present and outside the building when that incident occurred. Anyway, back to Op34 and my current AAR. Admins have to know the rules. Admins have to have a written copy of the rules on them so that they can reference it. The solution is simple. Make sure that admins have the rules on them, whether in a book or on a clipboard. I make my referees carry copies of the rules with them at my own events for this exact reason. So here's the thing, guys. Milsim is whatever you want to call it. A game, a sport, a hobby, a live-action roleplay, a field training exercise, whatever. It doesn't matter. All those things have rules. Rules can be pretty complicated. This event was AMS's first attempt ever to run an event without a safety brief. If we've got admins who don't know the rules, how can we expect the players to know them? I understand that AMS was experimenting with ways to save time and make registration and check-in go smoother, but in my humble opinion, the briefing is a necessity, and they need to bring it back. I've been going to AMS events since 2015, and I have never had to correct so many people for simple violations like talking and pointing while dead, moving towards medics under their own power, reloading their mags in the field, blind firing, using bandages that were like only a foot long. I even had to talk to players for failing to meet the uniform requirements or iPro requirements. Come on, guys. AMS events are higher quality than that. It was an interesting experiment, placing the responsibility on the players to read the rules, but apparently the community simply isn't disciplined enough to be trusted with that. Either that or the average player simply has too many rule sets from too many organizations floating around in their head, and it blurs together. Either way, the best solution that this filthy casual can come up with is to bring back the safety brief. You want to save time and reduce the workload of your staff? Do what Carl does at the Airsoft Arena in Milwaukee, or what Dave does at APOC Paintball in Poinette. Make a video. Make a nice production quality safety brief video. Hell, y'all know like every fucking Airsoft celebrity. You could have an all-star cast. Post it on YouTube so people can watch it beforehand and make everyone watch it at check-in too. Just have it running on a loop. It doesn't matter if the person has 10 of those little event patch squares on their helmet. It doesn't matter if they have 2 million YouTube subscribers and are in the video. They still have to watch it. Okay, I only have one more negative point to discuss. The locations of the FOBs. The UFS FOB location sucked. The FOBs were pretty close to where they were last year, with one team on the east side and the other on the west. Last year, Cost had the west side, and they struggled really hard all day and never really owned any of the field. This year, UFS had the west side, and it was our turn to experience that same frustration. The most important objectives of the scenario are all inside the main industrial complex, comprised of 77 and 75. Whoever starts in the east side practically starts inside those areas. The east fob is like literally a few meters from the back door to the complex. Meanwhile, whoever starts in the west has to run through the parking lot and bottleneck through a gate and a chain link fence just to reach the corner of the westernmost building, 64. Now, AMS did move the fobs a little from last year because they did recognize that there was an issue, but frankly they didn't move them enough to make a positive change. In fact, I felt that the location of the western fob was even worse for us than it had been for Cost last year. Here's the problem with this site. Breaching a building and clearing a room is hard. In real life, it is one of the most dangerous and difficult things you can be ordered to do as a soldier. The enemy is hiding in the shadows, behind cover, and aiming at your point of entry before you ever silhouette yourself in the door or window. You have every disadvantage. That's why it literally takes like an entire squad of guys to clear 1 or 2 enemies from a room. That's not an exaggeration. That's just force multiplier data. Everyone who's ever gone to military leadership course at even the most basic level knows about all that stuff. It makes for dry and boring PowerPoint, but it is true. So the attacking force always has a disadvantage. By a lot. Sierra Dynamics was able to get inside the buildings much faster than UFS because of their starting location. This meant that UFS had an uphill battle ahead of them all day. Yes, UFS did totally own the north side of the field because we were successful in establishing our diagonal southwest to northeast limit of advance. And yes, we were able to control both the minor production plants. But our real objective and the main mission was to get the main production plant, and we just couldn't get inside. Now, for day 2, AMS addressed this. They started platoons from each team inside the buildings, rather than having them sprint to the field from their fobs. This made a huge difference. Unfortunately, UFS was horribly outnumbered on day 2 because we lost a lot of people to the cold weather and to injuries. I myself had to consolidate 2 broken squads into 1 large squad. Alpha 3 and Alpha 4 became Alpha 34. Alpha 1 was completely gone. None of them came back on Sunday morning. I went from having 50 guys to having 28. The game did go much more smoothly on Sunday, though. I really wish my camera had survived day 1, because I would have had some awesome, intense CQB footage for you if it had. So AMS recognized the problems that they had on Saturday and addressed them accordingly for Sunday. That's a lot of work on their part. They had to change missions, move objectives, and do a lot of improvisation, all while constantly reassessing the weather and making emergency contingency plans all day Saturday. This event obviously provided some incredible challenges not just for the players, but for the AMS staff. As an event organizer myself, who regularly runs Milsims for 300 plus people, I have a great appreciation and admiration for that. It is a true accomplishment on the part of AMS that the event went as smooth as it did, considering the unique challenges they faced with the AO and the weather. My recommendation for next year? Ditch the outdoor fobs. Pick a good, open, indoor location in the main complex for each side. Put up a bunch of artificial lighting in those rooms and make those the fobs. Then everyone will get a chance to play indoors and see the awesome facility. The place is like a maze. It is large enough to host large-scale CQB games. Of course, there would still be objectives and missions outside the main complex too, so At any given time, you wouldn't actually have every player inside the facility all at once, because you'd have at least one platoon from each side running around somewhere to the north doing missions outside. The last thing I would like to comment on is the QR code reading mechanic. I like it. It's neat. In case you aren't familiar with it, AMS labeled all the props this year with QR codes. You had to read the QR codes of the smartphone app in order to find out what it was and whether or not you could move it. I like this mechanic a lot, but I do have a few suggestions. First off, I never bring my smartphone onto the field when I play Airsoft. I felt obligated to this time since I was a platoon leader. I was afraid I was going to lose it, or break it, or drown it all weekend. There were a number of people who did, in fact, lose their phones over the course of the weekend. My suggestion is that AMS pick up some shitty used old generation smartphones or tablets on eBay. They are super cheap. Install the QR reader app on them and issue them out to leadership, or make it the responsibility of some RTO, navigator, tech, engineer position in every squad to carry the thing. If people want to bring their own phone onto the field, they can, but this way they shouldn't feel obligated to. Also, I would consider taking the QR codes to the next level. Instead of just giving the name of the object or which side is allowed to capture it, I would consider issuing fragos through the codes. Like, reading the QR code tells the players not only what it is, but what they need to do with it and where they need to take it. I think the system has a lot of potential, and I really dig it. So, how did we do this year? Well, I can tell you that Alpha Platoon did excellent work. They did everything I told them to. Despite losing people to cold weather injuries like hypothermia and trench foot, traumatic injuries like a concussion and a serious fall that landed someone in urgent care, my troops never lost heart, even after we lost 12 KIA to a single enemy torpedo. I'm not counting the guy with the BB embedded in his ear that I had to remove with McGill forceps because he was Sierra Dynamics, not UFS. Anyway, I want to thank the UFS players who stepped up and assumed leadership roles in the absence of two squad leaders, both of whom had real-world injuries and had to leave. Despite the conditions, UFS fought through the near-freezing rain and accomplished their missions. We captured more intel packets, including complete sets, than Rick had ever seen before at any event, and recovered an entire pallet's worth of chemical barrels. We also held both minor production plants in Building 24 and 47 all day Saturday. Despite the frustration of not being able to capture Building 75, we really did control most of the field. It just didn't feel that way. It may not have felt like we won, since we got stomped pretty bad by Sierra Dynamics and CQB, but remember, there are no winners or losers in war. You either accomplish your mission or you fail. We were there to collect evidence that would incriminate Sierra Dynamics, and Sierra Dynamics was there to destroy that evidence and sanitize the facility. Neither faction was completely successful. We didn't get into the main production plant to download the computer, but Sierra Dynamics didn't stop us from collecting complete sets of intel packets and tons of samples from the labs and outlying buildings either. To all you mercenary scum at Sierra Dynamics, thank you for giving us a challenging uphill battle all weekend. I think you mall ninjas fight harder than cost. Thank you to the AMS staff for all the hard work you do to bring quality events like this into our backyard so we don't have to drive 30 hours to New Mexico just to see you. Especially Alex and his admin staff, who constantly run back and forth behind the scenes, making sure things are running smoothly. No one ever sees what they do, but that is only because they are good at it. Special thanks to AMS Rick for the personal invitation to help with leadership. It was an honor and a privilege. In case any of you don't know, Rick is the embodiment of what makes a good event organizer. He constantly asks about and worries whether or not people are having fun. His chief concern is the quality of the event, and he is very receptive to criticism. He truly does care. I know this because after my AAR of last year's event, he immediately reached out to me and wanted to know more. He didn't even know who I was, but he wanted to hear what I had to say because he cares about the quality of AMS events and the reputation of the organization. Also, I would like to thank Red Queen for going into Airsoft Mom mode as XO and making sure that the cold, sad, and hungry troops all got sandwiches and Nutri-Game bars every time they respawned. It's amazing what some peanut butter and jelly can do for morale. At the leadership meeting, Rick said that attrition would be our greatest enemy at this event, and he was right. Red Queen immediately took that as a challenge and insisted that we go to Walmart on Friday night to go grocery shopping for the troops. Personally, I feel it made a huge difference. Thanks, honey. Between juggling radios, feeding the troops, managing and directing respawns back to their units, and running the talk whenever Rick had to leave, you never even got to fire a single shot all weekend. and I know you wanted to play. It's okay. We're both signed up as riflemen for Broken Dagger, so we'll totally just get to go fight and enjoy the AO without any responsibilities or anything. Thanks for watching and listening. That's all I got. Until next time, ride eternal, Soggy, and Chrome.
Seriously, guys? It's just a fucking shark. When the great white sperm whale ripped off my leg, you know what I did? I stabbed that bitch right in the fucking eye with my own jagged, broken, severed leg, and then I fucked him. Bam! Right in the blowhole until he choked to death. Y'all need to stop being pussies about the sharks. If a shark is giving you shit, just fucking grab it by the gills, put its mouth on the edge of the street, and curb stomp the motherfucker. If there's two things that every Cub Scout knows, it's how to find the red light district and how to fuck up a shark. Yeah, I was so deep in that fucking whale that Javier Franco had to grab me by the hips and pull me out. He's the king of all Britons now.